Hello everyone, welcome to Rubble Road Soapstone. I'm David Swinowski. Today we're gonna have a fun time carving the owl. So get on in here, let's take a look and see how I carve the soapstone owl today. Okay, so here we have the owl silhouette. I've got a bin with some water in here to help trap the dust while I'm carving. I'm gonna use this steel tool to do my primary shaping on this piece of stone. So one of the things that we have to kind of think about when we're making this owl is, do we want to round off those horns, make it more of like a barred or a round-headed owl? Or do we want to keep those horns and keep them up on the top? And then another thing is the base. The base is another option. You can choose to kind of carve the feet in there, or just kind of carve up the base so that it's like more of a perch that the owl is sitting on. That's going to be one of the big deciding factors in there. So for those of you who are new to soapstone, it's that slippery feeling that gives this rock its name. We can use this rasp to kind of draw some of our patterning, some of our details that we might want to incorporate into our carving here. So I know I want to keep the bottom pretty blocky right now. I'm going to mainly focus on narrowing the head to help make the shoulders of my owl stand out and to kind of create that neckline too. And because we are carving a stone, we're not adding any rock, we're only removing stone. We have to kind of think about the beak as well. You know, where's that beak going to be? So if that's where the beak is going to be on my carving, I want to make sure I don't carve that stone down. I want to leave that and carve their face around it down to help kind of create that depth on the stone itself. Using the edge of my rasp right now to create a nice neckline here on my carving. And if you want, you can also hold your rasp like a pen or a pencil. Really kind of dig into that stone. I do a lot of rinsing. I want to be able to see the surface of my rock, but I also want to keep the rasp itself clear of any debris. I don't want to keep it full of dust. The cleaner my rasp is, the more effective it's going to be. And with this particular style, we have a flat edge along one side. The other side is kind of domed. So we've got like a little bit of a dome on there. On the one side, let's see if I can't get that on the camera. So the flat side is great. If you want to kind of round off an edge, you can use that to power through and grind those corners off and round off those square blocky edges. Whereas the dome side, this will be great for really digging in. So I can use this dome side to really dig into the face and help get that beak to start protruding and start sticking out. And if you're not sure how big you want the beak to be, start large. The bigger it is, that's fine, because if you end up making it too small, we're not going to be able to add that rock. But if we make it too large to begin with, we can always downsize it as our carving gets closer and closer to the finish. So if I'm gonna make an error on one side or the other, I would rather make it too large because I can always downsize that piece of stone. Too much dust, rinse it out. And you can see how that dome side really helps dig in and start carving into that rock and getting rid of that stone. So now I can use the flat side, now that I've kind of got that started, and just level out that rock. I can kind of see my neckline, so I know where I'm kind of sticking around, where I want to stay. I'm going to want to carve those horns a bit further back. Small little movements, choo 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 choo, right? For the owl as well, we have the two little points back here. I consider this one, the one furthest back, to be the wing tip. So if I want a nice bold wing or a nice big wing, I want to try and keep that wing fairly large so that the tail feather, I can carve that back further down to help make that wing kind of pop. But the larger my wing is, the less work I'm really gonna have to do on the base and the chest of the bird as well. So I like to try and keep my wings pretty large on the owl itself, and they just match right up to that little point right there. But I'm still gonna do a little bit more work on the head here first. I really like to round the head off. I don't try and keep it square or blocky. And rounding off is going to get rid of quite a bit of stone. And it's going to probably take the majority of the amount of time for this particular shape. As you can see, the stone's pretty soft. Really can chew through this rock pretty quickly. It's one of the nice things about it with the Brazilian soapstone. Not just that general overall softness, but an amazing range of color in this rock too. I've been importing Brazilian stone for about 2 decades now, pretty close. I've seen over 1 million pounds of this stone. We still see new colors. That's one of the most amazing things about it. With the rasps, you definitely want to be aware of that point. Doing your best to work away from yourself. You don't want to be poking it towards your hand. Definitely want to be tool aware. And with these ranges of color, we get a lot of varying shades of browns, varying shades of greens, combinations of these colors as well. One of the most common minerals you're going to get included in this soapstone is going to be iron. So if that rock has any of the brownish tones in there, that's because the iron oxidized, rusted, turns that stone that brownish color. All the black spots that I have on this rock, those are all little tiny pieces of iron that are just trapped inside of this stone. There can occasionally be enough heat and pressure, as this is a metamorphic stone. Sometimes we can actually get iron to form its crystal inside of soapstone. And the crystal form of iron is usually square or cubed. Looks like gold, but if I tried to take it to a jeweler to get a ring made, they'll probably call me a fool, because it's also known as fool's gold. Iron pyrite can form in this rock as well. That's going to be in your harder, denser stone. So with that metamorphic process, if you do a number of carvings, you're going to notice they're not all exactly the same. Some stones will have more heat, more pressure. It's going to be a harder, denser rock. Some will have less, so it'll be a softer stone. So that trade-off is those softer rocks, definitely easier to shape, but when it comes to sanding and smoothing these rocks, if you want a really smooth, glassy carving, you technically want a harder stone. The harder that rock is, the better a polish you can actually put on it. So it's going to take a little bit more effort and work to shape it, but when it comes down to sanding, you can get a much smoother finish on a harder rock. It'll just take a little bit more work and effort to do that primary shaping. But it's not a race, it's always a process. Doesn't matter what stone you're carving, it's not going to be one thing that's going to shape it and polish it up. It's always multiple steps. The nice thing with the soapstone when it comes to sanding, 3 simple steps, right? 3 simple sanding stages is pretty dramatic and pretty effective on this particular rock. First, we have to do our shaping. Just really trying to get that beak to stand out a little bit. As I'm carving back, I'm just going to kind of use the edge of my tool to kind of recarve that groove for the chin. If you find that the chest of the bird is kind of getting in your way, well, we're going to be rounding that off anyway. So if you want to, just round that edge right down. Make it a little bit more open. And it's primarily the pushing action with this particular rasp that does the work. If you actually take a look at the rasps themselves, you'll notice that those teeth are actually in stripes across, so actually carving side to side, you know, it'll probably still scratch the rock, but it's not as effective as going back and forth. It's that back and forth motion that really gets it done. Because we cut the shapes out on the bandsaw, sometimes the points on the owls aren't exactly the same. So if I want to keep those horns on, I can't make the smaller one bigger, but I can make the bigger one smaller. So I will eventually work on symmetry with those. But first I'm going to do a little bit of other work. Carving the face back. Getting that beak kind of where I want it. And once the beak starts to poke out, then you can kind of use the edge of your rasp and really refine the edges of the beak itself. All right. And if you go off track, don't worry about it. If you make little mistakes, just don't keep making those. And those will easily be erased as we continue carving or once we go to the sanding stages. So if I go off track a little bit, I'm not too worried up about it. If you want to be perfect with the symmetry on those horns, you may want to think about bringing out like a set of calipers or a measuring device. I'm just going to use my eyes, just visually look at them, and just try my best to keep them as close as possible. And around it, I'll go back, all the way around the other side too, back and forth. Round these shoulders off quite a bit right now. You can see it really gets rid of quite a bit of dust, quite a bit of stone. And that's why I really like using the water. It's going to trap all that dust in here for me so that when it comes time to clean up, all the dust is primarily going to be locked in this water, so I can either take it and dump it outside in the grass, Or if I'm, unable to dump it outside, I can just let everything settle, skim off that top layer of water, and then just scoop up that silt and just toss that in the garbage. Kind of matching up where the head's going to go, the headline. So and it'll be a little bit lower because the front is up here, but the bottom part is a little bit lower, so that's okay, because once I carve into the back, I can kind of bring the round base of the back of the head up a little bit more. So like I said, if you're going to err anywhere, try and make it a little bit bigger, so that way when you're making it smaller, you can match up those sizes. The nice thing about using the water as well, kind of gives me a bit of a visual on this stone a little bit early. Got some varying greens in here, a bunch of spots, but even some brown striping. Going to be a really, really pretty stone. Really beautiful. I have a feeling I'm even going to have some little flecks of sparkles, little feldspar flecks in here, which is nice. Going to be a really unique stone. And that's one of the things that Brazil is also known for, is some really, really unique colors. Which is always fun to see. So the front's kind of working its way back quite a bit. I'm going to try and do some work on the back of the head here now as well. So I'm just going to start by rounding off those square corners first. And you can use the flat side or the dome side for this. Both of them will work quite well for that. But I do find the dome side tends to dig a little bit more towards the center of that dome, whereas the flat side is a more even and consistent removal. So depending on how much stone you're trying to get rid of, that'll depend on what side of the rasp I'm going to use. Beak starting to stick out, right? Kind of see that shadow. Still got some big flat spot on the back of that head. And the more you round it off, the less that flat spot is going to be, right? I'll look from the side. Making sure that as I'm rounding off that head, I'm trying to even out the symmetry from the front to the back as I do this. So that by the time I get the head rounded where I want it, I should have the front and the back kind of aligned so that they match up really well. Push, 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 really scrubbing that stone away. Some of you may be a little apprehensive to use too much hand strength. You know, "Oh, I'm scared, I don't want to break it." If you're going to carve any amount of stone, you're going to break some rocks. Just part of the deal. If you're going to end up breaking your if your soapstone should end up breaking, just dry it out. Let it dry off and just use a super glue like Gorilla Glue. Provided those two contact points are nice and clean, super glue on one side, mush them back together. I like to use the blue or green lidded Gorilla Glue. I find it works the best for me. 2-part epoxy would also work really, really well. But I'll just glue those pieces back together, let that glue cure or dry, and go right back to carving. If you should accidentally drop your carving and you end up with more than 2 pieces, sometimes those pieces don't fit together perfectly. Sometimes you end up with like little missing gaps where there's no rock at all. When that happens and my carving is dry, I'll scrub it in an area where I know I want to shape it when it's dry, but I'll take the dry dust and mix it with the glue so that when I add that glue, it should fill that missing void. And because you're using the dust from the same stone, the color should also match. Just gonna make some bold grooves here to define where the base of my owl is going to be. Those tail feathers. And another reason I like to leave the base till last as well is the base is going to be the balancing point of your carving. So if you end up carving the base too small, the head could be heavy and it could cause your carving to be unstable. So I do like to leave the base for the last as well, but I'm just going to carve some defining grooves here. Just so I know where that base is going to be. Rounding out the base of the head here on the bottom, so I'm kind of concentrating the edge of my rasp onto that bottom neck groove right there. Bringing it all the way around. I don't want any flat spots on this head. It should be a pretty rounded head. Chewing into that stone. Don't worry about any scratches you're leaving behind with this rasp. Get rid of those scratches once we start sanding. Just trying to do my best to keep the tool as clean as possible so it's nice and effective. If you have some of your own tools at home, chisels and gouges work amazing on this stone. It's going to dull those tools faster, but you know, chisels and gouges do work really, really well, especially if you're not a fan of sanding. If you're not a big fan of having to sand it to smooth it, you probably want to try using those chisels and gouges because they leave a much smoother surface on your stone than a rasp does. Rocking my stone back and forth just to try and round off those edges. Choo-choo-choo. Same on the other side. Now that I'm really kind of rounding and narrowing the neckline on this owl, you can see how the shoulders are really starting to kind of pop right now. Really starting to stand out a little bit more, which is good. So I do make the head a fair bit smaller. Shoo that rock away. Looking from the side, seeing how it's starting to dome. I want to bring those horns or ears a little bit more further forward because I want the back of the head to kind of stick out a little bit, right? I'll use my one thumb to hold my rasp in place to keep it from popping off the edge and carving into the side of the ear. So I'm going to hold my thumb, kind of creating a stop so I can still be pretty aggressive. And chew into that rock. I think you'll find that pushing motion quite effective. Not so much side to side. Like side to side, yeah, it does scratch it, but not as much. You're not going to get rid of as much stone. Really starting to round off the back of that head. Really starting to round that off. It's looking good. Little bit of grittiness right now, and that's from the iron content that's in this particular stone. Making sure I've got a good grip on my rock here. And the more I kind of bring in the stone around the neckline, the more that shoulder area for the wings and the chest of this bird are going to pop. Just trying to get rid of as much of this stone on the edges as possible. Really round off, get rid of those flat spots. Work on the front a little bit more here. As long as you're seeing dust though, you know you're getting rid of stone. but I don't want the back of my head to be in line with the shoulders. I want to bring that further in a little bit more, just to help make that shoulder area pop. All right. Kind of rotating the stone as I'm doing this, so I'm not recreating another flat spot. Still want to keep it nice and rounded, right? Nice and domed. Checking on the front. Bring that chin underneath a little bit. And if you want to be quite realistic, you could always use Google Image to give yourself a bunch of different owl options. I find there's a lot of silhouettes that are really close to this general silhouette that we create. Which makes it handy. And I'll use multiple images if I'm trying to be really realistic in my carvings. I'll use multiple images, one for the head, one for the body, another for the base. But today I'm just winging it. Now I'm going to start focusing a little bit more on these horns and kind of getting them a little bit more evened out. Definitely got a taller one here than the opposing side, so I'll just kind of do my best to even that out. I don't want to make these horns too thin though, because we do need to leave some structure on this rock. We can't be making design aspects too thin because it is such a soft rock, right? Like if we were carving butterflies today, we wouldn't be making those wings as thin as a butterfly's wings. They would just be crumbling and falling right off of there. You've got to leave some strength behind, so try and remember that. With the one that I have here, you'll notice I still left like some little spikes. Little spiky ears on there. As I'm rounding the head, I'm kind of bringing up the edge, carving up to to the top of this horn, and that's what's going to help me kind of bring it down without getting rid of too much of it. So they're getting pretty close to each other right now. And if you wanted to be, like with the other owl that I had there, what I did was I got them close to where I wanted them to be with my rasp, and then I actually finished up that shaping with my first sandpaper. So you can do the bulk of the shaping with your rasp, and then you can also use your sandpaper, the first sandpaper stage, to just kind of put those final little touches on some of the more delicate aspects of your soapstone carving as well. Don't feel like you need to get it all done with the rasp. You definitely want to leave it a little bit larger than your intended final size, because once you do start to sand, you are still going to get rid of a bit of a layer of stone there as well. So it is still going to get a bit smaller once you start that sanding process. So I'm going to carve those horns a bit further back. I'm going to round the face of this owl. Carving those ears back. Very similar to a cat right now. Very similar. If you want to, you could also just carve from the top, grind these down as well. That's another way, but kind of see where that forehead is for my owl. Beak's still really big, but those ears are still a bit too thick. So I'm going to just use the flat side of my rasp. Carve right down to that kind of forehead line I just created. And if you ended up making your horns too small, you could always try lowering the forehead section down to try and make those horns kind of pop up a little bit more as well. Never working in one spot for too long. If I work in one spot for too long, I get too fixated on that, and I end up carving too much stone away. So I'm always kind of working Working around and around and around and around. Working from one area to another. And I find it takes me a good hour usually of carving to kind of get a good visual lead of where I'm going with the particular shape I'm working on. So if you've only been working for 20 minutes on it, it's like, it doesn't look like it's going very far. Give it an hour. Give it a little bit of time. Not a race, right? And even though it's the softest rock, it's still a stone. Like, it's still a rock from the ground. So it's going to take a couple minutes to do some shaping on here. Some carvings, if I'm not carving realistically, I'm just putting some bold style on those. I do find I can create those carvings a little bit faster. I do find that realism tends to add a bit of time to my carvings as well. But if I was just carving, geometric patterns in the stone or something like that, I could probably do that a significant amount of time faster than carving the realistic versions. And I could also use sandpaper number 1 to round off this forehead here, but I'm just going to use my rasp right now. Comfortable with it. Feels good, like it's working really well for me. Use the side of my rasp. Kind of reshape that beak a little bit more. I can bring that down. It's pretty ginormous right now. Definitely going to want to make that smaller. And with the beak, we can get that really close to where we want it to be, and then also use that first sandpaper to finish it up as well. But the closer we can get it with the rasp, the better, because it's going to do it a lot faster for you. Just my grip. can even use your opposing thumb to help push your rasp and really help hold it on track as well. Now I'm going to try and make my wings pop a little bit more, so I'm going to focus creating my wing lines right now. Turn that upside down, use the dome side to really dig into the body. Kind of using the edge of my rasp right now. Really dig in there. Make that wing start to pop. And then really narrow those tail feathers down. Move to the other side and do the same thing. So for symmetry, I want my line to stay roughly the same on both sides, so I'll just kind of eyeball that, try and get it close. Look from the front, yeah, that looks pretty good. And narrow that tail feather. Take a minute, take a look at it. See how my edges are lining up. Is one side higher, is one side lower? This is where I'm going to try and refine that before I create the curves for my wings. I've got my bold lines started, so now I'm just going to kind of focus on creating some symmetry between the front and the back. Kind of soften those edges a little bit. And make sure my tail feather, kind of center that up on the base as well, right? Using the flat end right now just to kind of straighten that out. Rounding the chest as I work my way up to the front. both sides. And I'm just kind of looking at the base of my head here and just making sure that my neckline is kind of even as well on the front and the back. Like I said, I'm kind of moving all around on this stone, right? Never staying in one spot for too long because I don't want to overwork an area. Using more just the flat edge of the rasp to really kind of refine the bottom of the neckline right now. It's aggressive, but it's not covering as large an area, so it's carving less stone for me, but it's really doing it effectively. Some shaping here, making sure I'm getting rid of any of the edges from the tooling marks here as well. Quite a rounded shoulder right now. It's looking really good. So I can kind of get rid of a little bit more stone and point these wings so that both wings are kind of at a point at the back of the bird, or I could even create a groove to split the front from the back or the left from the right side. And that shows really well in the two examples that I have here. So you can choose to keep it wider, or you can divide those wings. It's a choice you get to make for yourself, depending on the design you want. Or maybe the stone's just carving a little bit easier in one of those ways, so it might be prone to one of those styles over the other. So I'm going to start to taper my wings to a point. base is really flaring out now, which is good. And how small or how large you're going to leave the head is going to kind of be up to you as well. This is where I find that Google Images really help as far as scale, like how small or how large should the head be. It's going to be dependent upon what kind of species of owl you're working with, right? Or trying to go for your general design. But to round off the stone, you're going to be getting rid of quite a bit of that rock to do that. Narrow that tail feather again. Now I'm just kind of smoothing that out, trying to make sure I'm not leaving any super deep tooling marks right now. I don't want to make my neckline too narrow. Keep this more into the middle of the screen here. It's coming along well. If you wanted to create those feet, like I did on this one, you can create those little claws or toes on there. I used the point of my rasp and drew where I thought those little toes should be, and then I carve into the stone around it, bringing it down. For this particular base though, I'm just going to keep it more stylized. And I'll pretend like the toes are hiding underneath all those feathers, because I think the base is going to be really nice on here. So I'm just going to leave it. Carving those toes out though, take a bit more time, for sure. About another hour, roughly. Grit in here, a little bit of iron. Just trying to make sure I'm centering up those tail feathers. Quite a bit of stone, right? As I remove some of those, as I narrow those tail feathers, then I can actually carve and make the wingtips a little bit closer to each other as well again. Doing my best, rounding off these edges, try not to leave too much behind. It's not bad, getting pretty symmetrical. One might be a little bit wider than the other. So we'll try and even that up as well. And if you want to create those wings to kind of make the breast of the bird pop out, you can draw those on and carve into the chest a little bit more. But you know what, I think I really enjoy the natural color of this stone. It's almost like it's got its own natural divider on the wing here, so I think I'm actually just going to leave that. But if I wanted to create those bold wings, you know, again, draw them out and then carve into the body a little bit more. And that's what's going to help make those wings kind of pop out, right? Draw those feet on if you want them. A couple little claws. And I just use the point of my rasp to just kind of dig in all around to create those claws, right? For the base, I just used the edge of my rasp just to create these nice bold patterns, almost like it's on a rock or something, right? But you could just keep it smoother, draw some texture on that bird as well. It's one of the fun things. You can do so many different patterns on here. It's tough to catch them all in one simple video. Some nice texture on there. So I'm probably going to finish up my beak. Pretty close. Probably use my sandpaper to kind of finish that up, because that's a great way to refine some of those smaller little aspects. Same with the ears. I'll just use the sandpaper to finish those up. So that way I don't go too far, because they're getting so close to where I want them to be. If I go a little bit too far with the rasp right now, it's going to be hard to recover from that. So now I'm just going to refine the base. See how it's all balancing here too. Still sitting really well. So it's not front heavy, it's not back heavy, so I should be able to do almost anything I really want for the base right now. I'm going to keep the bottom part as large as I can, because it helps make it really stable, but we can taper in the top as well if we want, just to help make the body of this bird really flare out. Really pretty stone. I might make those wings a little bit pointier towards the back here first, actually. I don't want to make them a perfect point. If they come down to a perfect point, probably end up snapping that tip right off of there. So I'll get it close. I'm always running over the edges or the surfaces of my stone, because when we cut these shapes out with the bandsaw, it does leave a tooling mark on there. So I'm going to try and erase all those tooling marks I can with my rasp, so that once I go to my sanding stages, I'll just get rid of my rasp marks that I don't want. And that'll help really get that finish going. That finished surface. That's looking pretty good. I think I'm going to taper the base up. up towards the bird. So keeping the base really wide. I'm going to taper these edges so they come up to meet the bird. Keeping it wide, bringing it in as I work my way up. Yeah, I like that. It's different than the ones that I have, so. Got a really good grip on my carving right now because we are getting close to the end of that general shaping. So I've got some finer little points, so they would be prone to breaking if I was to drop my carving now. So I just want to make sure I've got a nice good grip on this rock right now, especially after all this hard work, right? Want to make sure I keep on testing the balance point on there, making sure it's not getting too wobbly. Still looking really good. And you can see the body is really starting to kind of stick out from that base as well, right? I'm going to keep the back fairly wide. I'm liking it. I'm enjoying it. Looking good. I like where this is going. Not bad, not bad. I like it. So I'm just going to refine. Go back to the head. Just try and make this look proportionate as much as I can. without making it too small. So now I'm just looking at the proportions of the bird, the head size, the body size. And just trying my best to get that where I want to be. Just really rounding off. The head shape for the most part. That's all we're really doing right now. I think I'm pretty happy with this general shape right here. I think I'm about ready to start sanding. And once you start sanding, if you really wanted to, you could change your water out. Just bring yourself some fresh new water if it's easily accessible. Not mandatory, just make sure that you're not going to scrub your stone on the bottom of your bin once you go into those sanding stages. But I might take a break and just swap my water out so that I have some fresh new water to do my sanding. I am going to point these wings a little bit more though first. Pretty close. I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to change this water out, get my sandpaper stages, and then get ready to sand this. All right, I swapped my water out. I've got my shape the way I like it. Now it's time to use the sanding pack. So inside that finishing kit, there should be 3 pieces of sandpaper. We're not really going to need the instructions because I'm here to help today. And we're not going to need this oil right away either. But there should be 3 pieces of sandpaper. We are going to go from the coarsest, the 220 grit, to the finest, which is the 600 grit. So we start with the 220. I'm going to use the grit side. Get that wet. Sandpaper number 1 is still going to leave some little scratches behind. That's okay. What we're just trying to do right now is get rid of the deeper scratches from that rasp and just start to smooth the surface here. So it's all about consistency right now with sandpaper number 1. This is looking really good. We want to try and get rid of all the deeper texture that we do not want on this stone, right? fold this sandpaper up any way you like to make it nice and comfortable. I like to fold it up so that I have grit on both sides, so that whatever I'm actually sanding, I'm going to make sure I'm actually sanding it and getting rid of those tooling marks. If you want, you can even fold it up even smaller. And just use this to be nice and thorough. It's all about the consistency of your texture with sandpaper number 1. Doesn't matter what rock you're finishing, it all starts from that initial finishing stage. So the more consistent you are, the easier it's going to be as we move forward. Push, 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 push. I do lots of rinsing with sandpaper number, well, with all my sandpaper stages technically. I want to make sure I can visually see the texture, but I also want to make sure I'm rinsing out the grit on my sandpaper as well. I don't want to clog it up with all this dust. I want to try and keep my sandpaper nice and clean so it's working really effectively for me. And the more your sandpaper kind of sits in that water, the more pliable it becomes. So if you want to, you can even let it sit for a couple of minutes before you even start sanding, just to make sure that sandpaper is nice and wet. When I'm rinsing, I'm making sure I don't scrub it on the bottom of the bucket. Don't scrub it on the bottom of the bucket. Keep it up, rinse. That way, if there's any grit or anything at the bottom of the bucket, it'll put scratches on your carving. And if we're trying to get rid of those scratches, we want to minimize putting scratches back into it. I want to stop that. So when I go to rinse it off, I just kind of hold it, support it as I do that rinsing. And I do a lot of rinsing because those little black spots of iron, we can knock those little pieces of iron out. And if we're not doing a consistent amount of rinsing, we can dislodge or knock one of those little pieces of iron out of there. And if we're scrubbing the iron across our stone, we're going to put scratches back into that carving as well. So now I'm looking for any little scratches that I don't want. Use my thumb, try and get rid of those, right? Trying to get rid of all the blatant scratches from the rasp. If I ended up working on a carving and I didn't shape an aspect, like the base here, you can kind of still see some gray stripes from the tooling marks from the bandsaw, I would still try and get rid of that striping mark to help bring out those natural colors. These little corners, these little areas where my fingers don't fit, I just fold my sandpaper up and I try and be really thorough in here. Lots of rinsing. And if I see any of the little gray stripes in there. I'm going to keep on sanding until those little gray stripes are gone. I want to get rid of those. Fold your sandpaper up multiple times if you need to, just to get in there and be effective. And while I don't always make all my carvings perfectly smooth, if I do want them to be, I have to be really consistent with the textures that I'm leaving behind with each stage of sandpaper. Rinse it out, take a look. Making sure you rinse that sandpaper out. That way it'll be a lot more effective. Try to do that as little as possible. Slow down, take your time. The most amount of breaks I actually usually get is when I'm almost done my carving, because I do get excited. I'm almost finished. I try and rush and speed it up. Slow it down. It's not a race. All about consistency at this pace, at this time. All the really hard work is done, so. Looking for those little gray stripes. I want to get rid of those. Hope those gone. I like using my thumb to push my sandpaper around. I find it works really, really well. Rounding off that beak a little bit right now, just kind of feeling for those square edges and just rounding that off. This is where we're kind of doing that final shaping with our first sandpaper, right? Push, 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 push. Folding my sandpaper up just to make sure that black grit is what's contacting the stone. So now I'm just kind of looking. Yeah, I might just sand the base here as well. I might go back and retexture the base just to have a nice contrast between the owl and the base of the carving. But if I want to right now, I can at least take a look at it, sand it smooth, because I can always retexture it really easily with the rasp. And the more consistent I am with sandpaper number 1 here, the easier it's going to be with sandpaper number 2. So I still have some little scratches here. That's okay. I'll get rid of those with sandpaper number 2. Deeper scratches, if it's got a deep scratch in there, I'll see if I can't get this to focus. Got a bit of a line right there. I want to try and get rid of that. That's better. It's gone. So I'm finished with sandpaper number 1. I'm going to go to sandpaper number 2. Sandpaper number 2 says 320 grit. Sandpaper number 2. Again, we're going to use this side. Get that wet. We're going to sand all over the stone one more time. I like to fold it up, making sure the black grit is on the outside. And this should get rid of all the little scratches that we have left behind. So use this to really finalize that smoothening all over this stone. How do we know we're going to be ready for sandpaper number 3? Well, all the scratches that we don't want to see, they should be gone before we go to sandpaper number 3. Again, I use my thumb for a lot of it. Just push, push, push. Scrubbing that sandpaper across the stone. Really trying to get into those corners and creases. Again, fold it up multiple times. Tuck it into those hard to reach areas. Push, push, push. So you can still do a little bit of shaping with sandpaper number 2, but it's going to be a lot less stone removed with sandpaper number 2 in comparison to the first sandpaper. Now I'm focused mostly on just smoothing this stone. Push, push. Again, lots of rinsing without scrubbing the bottom. Making sure all those scratches are gone. Lots of rinsing. Texture should feel pretty smooth too. Feels pretty good. And with this one, I am going to go back and retexture the base just so it has that nice contrast, because the stone colors kind of carry into the base. So by retexturing that, it'll really help add some distinction between the two, between the base and the bird. Making sure all the scratches I don't want are gone. Feels pretty good. Really good rinse. Take a look at it. I think I'm ready for sandpaper number 3. I'm not seeing any scratches on here at all, which is great. Maybe one little one right there. One little one. Gone. Get rid of that. Just like that. All right. Maybe just a couple in there. So yeah, those little corners and creases, they really tend to want to hide those little scratches. The better job you do with your sanding stages, the better that finish will come out. And the more rinsing you do, the more you're going to visibly be able to see it. So if you want to have that really, really great finish, take your time, lots of rinsing, and just be patient, consistent. Which is always tough right near the end because you just want to be finished. Yep, I like it. Sandpaper 2 goes out. Sandpaper number 3, the 600 grit. This is the last one, number 3. Again, we're going to use the black grit side. Put that in water. And one more time everywhere. This should be the fastest sanding stage. Just a quick once over. You're not getting rid of any scratches. You're not doing any shaping. All you're doing is just smoothing that existing surface now. That's it. All the hard work was done with the rasp. Then we kind of start to smooth it out with sandpaper number 1. Get rid of all the scratches with sandpaper 2. And then glass up this surface with sandpaper number 3. So if you did a great job with the first 2 sanding stages, sandpaper 3 should be the fastest step. Again, I don't want to scrub it on the bottom. You will not be getting rid of any stone with sandpaper number 3. So if you find you still need to get rid of a little bit of rock somewhere, go back to sandpaper 1 or 2 to do that, because they'll do it a lot easier than sandpaper number 3. All this is going to do is just smooth that existing surface. Once I'm finished with all 3 sanding stages, I'm going to go rinse my carving in clean water, and then I'm going to let it dry. I like to let it dry overnight, that way I know the complete carving is dry. If it's a softer rock, those softer stones, they're kind of like a sponge. They're going to soak up that water. And the outside starts to look dry, but there can be some trapped moisture inside the middle of your stone. So I always let my rocks sit for 1 day before I do that final oiling. I just want to make sure I've got a nice, clean surface. I don't want any of this dust hiding on there. Just want a nice, clean surface. Right around that beak. feeling it. Feels like glass. Feels so nice. Looks pretty good. Feels pretty good. I think it's right where I want to be. So I'm going to rinse this off and let this dry. I hope you're enjoying your owl carving as well. Looks good. I'm happy with that. So I take that sandpaper out. I'm going to rinse this off in clean water, and then I'm going to start that drying process. All right, so the carving is rinsed and dried. Now I'm going to do that oiling. I've got it placed on a paper towel. I'm going to oil the undersides here that are hard to reach first. So I get that oil out. I'm just going to use that Q-tip like a paintbrush, essentially. Dip it in there. Get those hard to reach areas on the bottom first. Because once I stand my carving up, it's going to be tough for me to get those. I'm going to be texturing the base of my carving, so I'm not really worried about getting the bottom here. I'm actually going to be going back and scraping that so it's nice and coarse. I'll flip this over. Oil this other side. You know what, for today, we can oil it anyway. I can always go back and retexture it, right? It isn't gonna hurt it for me to oil it now. And all it does is just bring out those beautiful natural colors that are in our rock anyway, so. Now I can stand this up and oil the rest of this carving. A nice light coating. Now that I've got the base, the bottom part, the hardest part kind of oiled up, now I can kind of work from the top down. And just making sure I've got a nice light coating everywhere, all over this stone. Doesn't take a lot. Just doing my best to be nice and thorough. Now I'm going to let this oil sit on here for about 2 hours, and I'm going to wipe it off. And if it's a harder stone, one coating is usually enough. If it's a softer rock, it might need another coat. But I'll let this sit for 2-3 hours, and then I'll wipe it just so that any of the little corners or ridges, I don't want the oil to pool up in there, because if it does have any of those little corners or edges and it pools up, it'll kind of coagulate a little bit and it kind of gets a little bit gummy. So I just let it sit for 2-3 hours and then I wipe that rock off. That looks good. So let that sit. And then give it a wipe, and then if it's got that dull matte finish, I'll give it another coat. All right, so we'll come back. And there we have it. I hope you enjoyed carving this shape as much as I did. It's a real hoot. If you'd like to see more shapes, more selections, check out Rubble Road Soapstone. I'm your host, David Swinowski. Thank you very much for joining.